Welcome to the Massive Change Show. I'm Justin Foster.
And I'm Dr. Virginia Lacayo. In each episode, we have conversation with leaders who are getting in some good trouble by challenging paradigms and shaking the system.
And after each conversation, the episode shifts to the second show, where Virginia and I chat about what we learned from the guest.
If you know of any leaders who will make a great guest, please introduce us.
And of course, if you enjoy the show, please like, share, and leave a review.
Thanks for listening.
Welcome, Megan Imbert, to the Massive Change Show. Life is a strange thing. I think we met once before at Sarah King's Aurora House when we still lived in Austin, and we had this great conversation with you, and then we moved. So, yes, welcome back to
thank you for
conversation.
Thank you for having me and hosting a space to have important conversations. Great to see you all again.
Yeah, good to see you as well. Yeah. And so just tell the guests or tell the listeners just a little bit about you. You're kind of where you're at in the world, and keep it relatively short, but yeah, give us a flavor of you.
Yeah, it's such a tough question right now for me because when you answer a question about who are you, what are you up to, it goes into sometimes the identity of what's my job, what am I doing in the world? And so the last 15, 16 years, I've been corporate America, high tech, I've been doing marketing. But then since 2020, I really stepped into my courage using my voice. I was actually a whistleblower against a former NFL owner, Dan Snyder. And when I went on record around the treatment of women and all of that, it really just unlocked something in me of some of the things that I'm seeing in the world and where I want to help others get into their power and their sovereignty and really speak truth to power. So I'm a little bit of kind of in between worlds, if you will, in terms of I did my 3-week Entheo Guide training last year. So I've been working with plant medicine in my own healing, and as well as I started my own podcast, The Frequency of Courage, after going on record in 2024. And it's a beautiful thing to have conversations that matter and help people heal. So it's hard to define myself right now. It's still stepping into my voice and sharing wisdom, as well as being vulnerable. And kind of, I joke around, like for Halloween, I need to be the permission slip. Like it's okay to show up and to speak your truth. And my ethos right now is more around like there's love and fear in the world. And if I'm heart-centered and courage means from the heart, and I'm living that way, direct can be kind and loving and changing the standards we have for leadership. So I feel a call to help people become leaders of their own life, and we'll see where it goes. So I'm here for the ride. I don't feel like I could box myself in anymore. It's just kind of like following what my soul's sort of calling now.
Yeah. And I think that's important. It's a good example because we are all multidimensional and we are not what we do because we changed that. We are not where we live because we changed that. We are not the fixed, things. We are creatures that are constantly evolving, hopefully, at least most of us. And so nobody should be able to define ourselves in a static way. So kudos for that.
Yeah. And as a football nerd, and it's interesting how the team, the Commanders, the new owner is like the exact opposite of Dan Snyder. He's much more.
I hope.
Yeah.
I hope, but
but based off of his past and his statements, and even his remarks and the way he carries himself and stuff. He's at least not that kind of guy. He's more like Jeff Lurie with the Eagles, similar type of guy. So, but anyway.
I'm hopeful.
This isn't a football podcast.
Very skeptical. I'm skeptical of everyone right now, especially in the Billionaire Club with the Epstein files and everything.
Yep, exactly.
I feel so much, and I never want to categorize anyone, but I also want to see men, particularly in power, really starting to call this stuff out too. So
Yes,
that's something as
exactly.
well where I'm like, you can be quiet, but I look at that as complicity, and it's that proximity to
Yes,
power that you all know. So
yes.
I'm a little bit like, I'm trying to call these people a little bit higher in terms of like, you're a leader,
Yeah.
and the only thing cooler about some of
Yeah.
these people is their bank account. Like more
Yes,
money.
true. I mean, yes, I understand your, well, it's a well, especially considering, you've been on the inside of it. So, well, with
Mhm.
that, you find yourself in this flowing, place of life, kind of like you said, following the call of your soul. And so let's get into the
Yeah.
questions that we love to ask system shakers. Go ahead,
Yes.
Virginia.
So the first question, I think you start mentioning a few things, but I want to give you the space to state it clearly. What is your powerful idea that will piss off a lot of powerful people?
I feel like I'm starting to do it daily. I feel like there's a couple of things. I look at this whole frequency of courage that I've created and looking at it more of as a movement. And I've also been coming up with thinking about, we need this humanity renaissance, which is, creation, art, relying on more community, getting away from the patriarchy a little bit more. So I think the big idea, it's not a unique idea, is really helping people come back home to themselves and step into their power and step into their voice and kind of pull themselves out of these systems and these patterns and these beliefs and these hierarchies. And so it's royally going to piss off leaders if I'm trying to get them to be more autonomous and community led and back to, supporting the earth, and more of like a call for like a heart-centered revolution, if you will, like leading from the heart, and not what I'm seeing right now that grosses me out, but I understand it, and I'm learning to have more compassion with it, is the amount of wounded leaders that are out there, and they're leading from fear, and then that fear perpetuates hate, and that fear perpetuates what we're seeing. It's violence, and it's sickness for the planet, for each other. And from my perspective, if we started really loving ourselves, look in the mirror first, start at home first, and then it ripples out. That's the thing I think that will piss off more people, is that if they're trying, the people, I should preface, the people that are trying to keep these systems intact to control. And if we go down the path of patriarchy, I think even that word becomes triggering to some people when it's like, ooh, patriarchy, matriarchy, when in reality it's like, the patriarchy has been a disservice to men as well, and understanding like vulnerability, authenticity, talking about our feelings. And because the way we're doing it is not working. People are sick, they're tired, they're exhausted. So ideally I want folks to reconnect with themselves. I think it's the ultimate premise is love over fear, and making that more of a movement.
And do you think with it now, I mean, it's interesting the evolution that we have seen, especially on social media, or at least, I don't know if it's really authentic, all of it, but at least it's more visible. In the last, I don't know, 5, 10 years, we have seen an increase in people calling to that, or, sending that message that we should love more, that we should heal ourselves, that we should do yoga and meditation and other kind of healings and connect and community and all that. Do you think that we're actually leading, more and more people is leading that way, or we're still way behind?
I think it's a really interesting layered concept, because the irony of all of this is, I work in technology, and there's all of these apps and information sharing. So many people are like, wow, has it always been like this, whether good or bad? The rapid information sharing and way of finding out information. So I think it's kind of twofold, because we all know the algorithms, and we end up seeing the reality of which we're creating, and at the same time, discernment and is very, very important, I think, now, because I studied media technologies and marketing in college. My don't tell my school this, but I feel like my degree is kind of obsolete now. Once people got a smartphone, and you could go viral at any given time, and people not understanding the importance of corroboration of sources, validating information, bias, who's owning these different companies and all of that stuff. So I think that I think it's just coming down to having the discernment. And AI, I wrote about this recently because I think it's fascinating. Like, AI is going to be able to make us like superhuman, supercharged, but it's not going to take away our human connection and consciousness. And that's the piece that, again, the narratives around fear of AI taking the jobs. And sure, there are jobs being cut, but let's be clear, like some of the jobs by Amazon being cut, like so many of those people are even making livable wages, and this is one of the richest men in the world. That's a whole other separate conversation. So it's, again, this like kind of fear tactic brewing. So I think that we are seeing a rise in consciousness, to your original question. And as more people are truly becoming more awake, more conscious, more, I would say more alive and out of the patterning that they've constantly been programmed, I think we are going to see people at least starting to question, is this real? Is this not? Like, isn't it wild the rest of our lives, every time you see a video online, you're going to be like, wait a second, is that AI or is it real? Like,
Yeah.
I think critical thinking skills is essential these days. And unfortunately or fortunately, like being able to call out what doesn't appear real and challenging people on, hey, like that's actually false. Or, you know, if people are only using social media as their form of news, like I think we have an issue there too. So anyway, to your question, I feel like consciousness is raising though. And it's going to be, I feel like resonance is spread. But discernment, I'm not quite sure if you can teach discernment unless you're teaching someone, like I said in the beginning, to come back home to themselves and like have intuition. Like if that doesn't feel right, that person or what you're looking at, it's like really teaching people to trust themselves, I guess, versus everything at face value. So it's an interesting question.
Do you think, as it relates to coming back to themselves, which, you know, is a dangerous idea, it's a kind of form of self-liberation, let's say, do you think that transcends the traditional left versus right ideological spectrum?
Absolutely. I actually, for the longest time growing up, never really thought we should have party systems. And my belief systems are more liberal leaning because they're definitely more love and community and such. However, I would love to get to a place, and this goes back to some of the systems that need to be challenged and changed, is I would love where before people voted, at least in the United States, it would be, what are your values? What do you really care about? And like, take the candidates away, but like, are you actually aligned? Like, or are you programmed, oh, because my parents voted Democrat or my parents voted Republican, this is just ingrained in me, versus like, do I really believe that, like, you know, all abortions are terrible, versus actually it saves someone's life in certain instances? Like the nuance becomes missing.
Nuance, yes.
Yeah, I actually thought, this is going to sound sassy, but I was like, ooh, I feel like a podcast called Nuance would be so fun. But the challenge is, I don't think everyone would know what the word meant. And I told it sound like, you know, it sounds like an asshole.
That's true, right?
But it's like, it's that gray area, or it's like not everything is so cut and dry like that. So yeah,
that's interesting. Yeah, it reminds me of one of my favorite dad jokes, which is, "Don't make me explain to you what condescending means." So anyway, so let's kind of get into the challenges, and you kind of, you know, mentioned a little bit of this in your story, where you're at right now, that you're kind of in between. And so maybe that's one of the challenges. I'm not necessarily putting that on you, but as you think about taking these ideas out to the world, whether it's through your podcast or trying to monetize them in some way through thought leadership or speaking or whatever, advising, what are some of the things you're wrestling with internally, externally? You know, be as vulnerable as you'd like. I know that helped. I mean, yeah, I think part of the reason we asked this question is that one of Virginia's sayings is, love is not enough. You also need skills. And one of those skills is the honesty about what's hard and what's not. And I think there's a lot of pressure with people that do like work in consciousness or social good, that either the spectrum is either you're a martyr or like everything's happy dappy, and a lot of it fucking sucks and it's hard and you lose friends and you lose money and sometimes, and so we like getting into the shit because that's the real thing.
Yeah.
So
I love that question, and it feels really potent to me. In fact, I feel like I'm going to journal on this later. I was having a conversation with a friend over some coffee this morning, and there's a couple of things. If I go back to when I went on record against the NFL, I originally went on record because for the sake of the other women, I uncovered that they were making explicit videos of the cheerleaders unbeknownst to them. And when I learned that, I was like, fuck that, put my name to this, and the risk that comes with that. So there's a piece to all of this. And I have chills as I say this, which is also like, it has been like messaging for me of like, when I'm really stepping into like, ooh, this feels scary. Why does it feel scary? And scary can also be exciting, is because I think deep down, there is that fear. And it comes down to security and it comes down to safety. For me, it's like, yeah, when you really, and especially women, we've seen this over the course of human history. When we speak out, there's the danger. You will die. You could die. Ancestrally, we carry that in our genes, right? Like this is a real, very real thing. And when we see the nature of how careless somebody could just be out there speaking, or like you look at a Martin Luther King, or you look at someone and it's like, they're assassinated, but they know what their soul mission is and they're doing it. So naturally, like, I don't want to die, but the big grand philosophy way I think that this world could work is obviously going to piss somebody off, and I don't want to live in that fear. But it's a very real thing. I don't want to die. There's that scary part. The other part, to your point, you alluded to is, I have a great job in corporate America. I do have a great job. I like my paycheck. I'm a single income person and I'm doing really well. Like, I'm like, I feel like I'm an act of rebellion. I'll be 40 in March. I'm like, I'm letting my gray hair come in. I do live in Texas though. I live in Austin, but I sit here and I'm like, I do like my creature comforts. I do like having my roof over my head and my safety net of an income. And then there's also the part that came online for me recently around like right now with the healing work I've been doing is getting my internal infrastructure, my nervous system actually ready for what conversations or what I might be met with in terms of adversity. And with the healing work, it's made me so much less combative. It's made me much more healing and compassionate in terms of especially my male wounding. And so my thought here is, I was talking to a friend this morning, even around veterans, right? And like the PTSD that so many have, the populations we might have missed in this country around like the elders and the initiations of like boys to men and like what all those archetypes look like, but also the role that some of us women, I think, can play if we're in our softness to also help guide them back to their hearts and realize like, all I see now, it's like wounded children everywhere. And so if I approach people and I see like, we all have a story, we all have these experiences, I think it's just going to make for a gentler world. And I know it might sound utopian, but like if you were to ask me like, okay, Megan, you go out and you start speaking and then like you're met with violence, like those are real life scenarios. Like, am I ready for that? Like, no, but you know what I hope is that I really hope that there's people that would be there side by side with me. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's kind of the rally cry. And I know you all have a lot of expertise in these arenas, but I think it's really comes down to safety and security. And like, like if there's a bigger purpose and a bigger soul calling, like how do we show up in a way that we can survive? And ideally too, like, I don't want to be like, I just did a podcast episode around like creation versus consumption and like our pleasure, our expression, like these are also acts of rebellion, the art, the stuff we can put out into the world. So figuring out that balance too, where I don't want to live in such an intense way either. I want to enjoy and have, fun too.
Yeah. Well, there's this, in my experience, this awakening, and this sort of like, it's kind of like, it's three levels, I suppose. It's like, fuck this shit, as you did with the systemic abuse of that you saw, and the cover up, and all the things that is just so sadly common. And then there was like there's the probably the high of that, like I did it, and then there's like, now what the fuck, what do I do? And then, but I promise this to you and everybody else, is kind of a little bit of a dark valley that you cross, but the purpose of that dark valley is to get to know yourself at a deeper level, parts of you that you didn't get to know when you were like in the system. And this is why I believe very strongly that systemic change is going to come from people that were in the system and then left it. I use the example of like Gandhi. Gandhi he wasn't some like barefoot hippie that came out of nowhere. Like, he was the system. He benefited directly from the system, but he walked away from it anyway. And in that valley, you find this thing, the healing and things like that. But one of the biggest things is and I think a little bit of this is social programming from more like kind of left-wing views. I know this is a lot with my progressive friends, that somehow you have to lose parts of yourself to monetize yourself. You don't. There's so many examples of people. That's why I created the whole 5-module course I have called Fuck the Formula. There's so many examples of people, individuals and companies that were like, no, we don't have to do it that way. In recent years, it would be like Costco and them, telling Trump to fuck off related to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and many other examples, And but you have to almost like, it's not just social conditioning, that capitalism and the kind of the propaganda of that side of the American dream and all that. That's true. But there is another side of that social conditioning, that money is icky, for example. And there's a great book called The Soul of Money that I highly recommend, that she went through that process, the author did, of realizing that money is just a tool. And it's evidence of where your energy is flowing more than anything. So anyway, there's some commentary that I didn't want to wait for the second show.
No, I think it's so smart. And actually, like, looking at money as a tool was actually something I had to go through, because I had anxiety. I had 2 jobs when I was 15 and those kinds of things. And even with my financial advisor today, we like take away the dollar signs. When it's just numbers, I don't have all this emotion tied to it. You put the dollar sign, apparently it makes me nervous. But something you said earlier that I had to realize was, when I realized that I went on record for all those other women, but I wasn't willing to go, I was going to go anonymously for myself. When I realized that, I was like, something's off here. And it came down to my self-worth, my self-love. And I think that was the change for me, where it was, because I get people reaching out to me all the time around, I post on LinkedIn. I know you're very active, Justin, as well. I follow your stuff. I've had some people reach out, like, I have so many strong opinions. I don't know, like, what's appropriate for me to say. I'm worried, all that stuff. And I swear, for me, it was like something just clicked, where it was like, I cannot self-abandon again.
Yes,
and that's the piece that you touched on in the beginning, was loneliness. And, when I went on record, I had moved to Austin at the end of 2019. Then the world shut down in March. I was on the front page of the Washington Post by August of 2020, and it very alone. And of course, friends, family, nervous about it, more scared than anything. When in reality, I'm like, it's not a question. Like, I am doing this. It's losing the friends, having people just kind of maybe also like in awe, or like, oh, wow, don't fuck with Megan. Even in my corporate job, some guys were like, oh, I was a little nervous to work with you. I'm like, well, do we have an issue? I'm just kind of like, well, what are you worried about? If you're being appropriate with people, then we have nothing to worry about. So it is kind of an interesting thing, where part of me was feeling like, that point of like, we don't have to box ourselves into one thing. Like, the fact that I'm building this podcast, I'm starting to do speaking engagements. I'm figuring out like, what is my brand and how am I going to show up in the world, while I'm also doing something that I love and that I'm good at. And it doesn't mean, I think what I'm feeling too is like, these are the points of me learning about my own leadership, particularly like a new paradigm for female leaders in corporate America, like in all male dominated spaces, that my softness and my intuition, I literally have people interviewing like, I want to be on your team. And so for me, I'm like, there's a whole prototype here of like what I'm experimenting with also in terms of boundaries and not being the people pleaser. And people aren't always used to someone like pushing back, but I think it's necessary because also the way in which work is working or not working. I think about I'm not a mom. I feel like I'm a mother of the earth. I have my dog, but I have moms on my team, and I get to know my people in such a way too, where it's like, having an early morning call when they're trying to get their kids to the school bus or whatever they're doing. It's like thinking about people's lives in a different way. So I think there's like bits and pieces where we all can be relatable to someone, or like, oh, wait, that was inconsiderate of me to think about that, or like knowing what's going on in someone's life more than their production and their outputs is so important. So I think we're also seeing like there's a dissolve between the personal and the professional. Like
Oh yeah.
like I want to know who you are outside of here. Are you a racist? Are you a misogynist? What are your conversations at the dinner table? Like that does matter to me, because like part of my job is like I'm making people more money and I'm supporting them and all of that. So I've just had these moments of like, if it feels in my body out of alignment, like I'm going to have conversations about it, or I'm going to have to pick and choose if I'm going to be in those systems. So self-abandonment.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yes.
That is very powerful. I think that most people, if not everybody, has done that at least once in their life. If still not doing it, is just to ignore yourself and abandon yourself and what matters to you, and you live for other things outside of you, and it has a big impact on yourself, your family, your society. I mean, everywhere.
I see it a lot too in health, right? Like if you're in a unhealthy relationship or if you're in an unhealthy job, I believe it physically manifests. I believe it can turn into things, stress and all of that. So I think that's why I take leadership so personal, and why I really want to see kind of a new standard. Like Donald Trump, is that the best we could do? But at the same time, I'm like, whether we get into like, whether election results are real or not or whatever, there's still a population that resonates with, and that resonates with in such a way of like, it literally, I have visceral reactions to that. But there's something there too, where it's like he's a mirror to someone there, or, and anyway.
Yeah.
Go on a tangent, but I'm like, not the best we can do.
Yeah, that's why I say about him and the Epstein stuff in particular. It's like, if you're still a Trump supporter, it's not guilt by association; it's guilt by accomplice. Because
you're a co-conspirator.
You're a co-conspirator, and you got these tofu-spined cuck boys that are Republicans, and they're like tofu. They take on the flavor of whatever they're cooked in, and they're the weakest people I've ever seen. What's interesting is the strongest of those Republicans have been the women. Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert, who I think are crazy and everything, and I don't agree with their politics, but at least they've been more, Nancy Mace too, more morally consistent with this. But if you're just a rank and file Trump supporter and you still support him, if you didn't, the Republicans that run everything, that they would change, because they're weak ass cuck boys. Like I said, they're not gonna be like, oh no, we're doubling down on him. And the only reason they don't hold Trump accountable is because they're afraid of the base still, even though it's a shrinking number. But anyway, that should have been in the second show. But goddamn, so anyway, let's go.
There's so much here.
Yeah, so much here. All right, let's go to the last question for Megan, please, Dr. Lacayo.
Yeah, the last question is, based on everything that you're doing and your ideas and your values and what you want to see, what is the impact you hope to make in the world, and how would you know that you have achieved it?
This one makes me a little bit emotional, because it's like sometimes it's like, is the ego talking or is the soul talking, and like service related. The cheesy Hallmark card answer is like, I want to make a difference in somebody's life. I know I've already done that. I think I feel a sense of urgency around letting my love for humanity in the world shine in a bigger way and step into spaces that, even if there's one person listening today and they get like one nugget from our conversation that impacts their life, like that's the ripple. And so for me, I think it's just by following whatever this path leads and calls me to do, and not second guessing me ever again. And also knowing that this next chapter of my life and the rest of my life is doing it in collaboration with people that have been there, done that, or maybe a different flavor. And what's been on my heart too, it's like I never would in a million years would have thought like, helping men or veterans or whatever, because I think I had fear there, like of like veterans or armed services, police officers, etc. Like the masculine wounding there like made me keep some of those folks at a distance. When in reality now I'm like, that's like an area that I want to start going in and learning more about and being kind of a bridge and seeing what I can do and help. So I think it's more or less like I don't want to I don't want to play small anymore, I guess, is really the answer. And like really stepping in on like, how can I be of service to the world? And I think to the point around safety, security, money, like I think the more we step in and there's resonance with whatever I'm saying or how I'm leading my life, like money will follow, right? I think it's just kind of silly because it's like, yeah, we need our shelter and our food and like these silly things like money to, but to your point, Justin, it's a tool. So I think the impact I want to have is like exactly whatever that impact might be. Like I already know if I was to look back on my life and at, before 40 have gone on record against a billionaire and, raised money for cancer research and done all these things, I'm like making the impact. It's just like making sure that I'm living in such a way that's in alignment with my true nature, that's in the goodness for others too. Then I think I'm on the right track. And I think it's fair game of like, how good can it get and how big can the impact become? But I also want to start having fun and doing this with people versus feeling like I'm carrying this along my back. And to your point, like, I don't want to be the martyr. I don't want to be a victim. I don't want any of those fucking stories at all anymore. It's like, I have a beautiful life and whatever these gifts are, like, I used to think I'm too much. I care too much. Like, now I'm like, fuck that. Like, it's just, I was attracting the wrong people and knowing how to like love people and let them go. So that's a very long tangential answer to, I think it's just stepping in as big as I can and knowing like the world's got my back here. And, sometimes I just lay in the grass now where I'm like, I don't necessarily have that person to give me a hug. I'm just going to take it from the earth. You know what I mean? Like I lay in the grass with my dog and I'm like, yeah, I don't know who's got me right now, but the earth certainly does. It sounds so woo-woo and cheesy, but that's kind of how I'm riding.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's like you said, it's lonely work. That's why we do need to like partner up, buddy up, tribe up, whatever you want to call it. We have to do that. It's because it's not natural. It's not necessarily the system's not going to provide that. It provides kind of the opposite, And also, I just feel in my heart to say, like, it sucks to be a feeler and be called to change things. It'd be so much easier to be called to change things than not give a shit. It's like, but it just means that all your parts are alive. That's all. Your ego mind is just trying to protect you. It doesn't really ego mind doesn't give a shit about our calling. It just wants to feel safe. But it's all just indicators you're going the right way. Years ago, like 2015, somewhere, I was at Mozart's in Austin, this cool coffee shop on the water, on the river. And somebody had written I still have the photo somewhere, on the stone wall, "Fear means go." And I think about that every day, as we built this business with Massive, and we're constantly grinding to be transparent, like grinding, not out of a lack of conviction, not out of a lack of excellence and great ideas and things, but to find the thing that is the breakthrough, so that we realize that we're starting to get on the other side of that long, dark valley, to that real impact of reaching people. And all I know to do is double down, on it, double down. So
thank you for all you are doing in the world.
You're welcome.
And it's also true that the system doesn't want to change. As you said before, I mean, the people that has power are the ones that wants to keep the system the same and not changing. And one of the most effective tools the system has is isolation. I mean, they're gonna ostracize you, they're gonna isolate you, they're gonna make you feel crazy, all that kind of things. So you lose your own power and your courage and your capacity to keep going. So one of the best approaches, the best strategies to fight that tactic is to get together with other people and support each other and saying, like, the system wants that to do that to us, and we're not gonna let it.
You're spot on. It's like isolation, and then also, you know, obviously we see all the news, distractions, and then also exhaustion. And
Yes.
when someone doesn't know, like, what is that compelling call to action, or how can I actually make an impact? I think there's so many people that want to make an impact, but they're also like preserving, you know, even Epstein files alone. Like, I don't know anyone's nervous system that can actually handle going through all of those files and literally being okay, unless you're completely dissociating, not to mention all the other news that we have accessible at our fingertips. So yeah, the isolation piece, it's interesting you raise that, because I was always such an extrovert. And before I moved to Austin, obviously moving away from family, friends, and then the world shutting down, I believe in like the divine timing now, because by not knowing many people here and still having my day job, thankfully I could do remotely, I was able to so much focus on that purpose. And had I still been in Virginia, where I was living outside DC, also with the proximity of the team right there and all that stuff, I don't know if I would have been as like aggressively involved. You know, I'm doing my day job and then I'm talking to congressional staffers in between calls. Like, it was the weirdest thing. But to that point, the isolation worked in my favor. But then I also was really, really alone when like no one could relate other than the other people that really risk themselves like that. So it's kind of an interesting club. Like, our lawyers are the same. So Deborah Katz, Lisa Banks, same lawyers of clients from Harvey Weinstein, right? And it's so interesting because like now I'm like, I text Lisa like at least once a month, just checking in on things and how they're doing. But even when you think about the lawyers and the people that commit to trying to help these huge issues, it's like they carry a lot too, and so much risk, because they're dedicated to trying to actually hold people accountable and have some justice as well in these scenarios. So I'm always, again, the feeling part, I'm like always thinking about like, wow, what a life, you know, and how we support each other.
Yeah. That's beautiful. Well, in that spirit, what can we and the listeners do to support you?
I think right now my big call to action, if they feel like they're not annoyed by hearing me talk on here, would be to follow and listen to my show and share my show. It's called The Frequency of Courage. I have it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music right now. And if there's anyone listening that whatever I'm saying might resonate, please feel free to reach out to me, LinkedIn, Instagram. I really do want to step into speaking more, and I'm feeling called down the road, I think, to help with people become better leaders. And ideally, I'm going to start hosting some ceremonies and things like that in due time. So,
okay, yeah, we'll definitely link to that in the show notes. And if it would be reciprocal for one of us to be a guest or both of us to be a guest, we'd be happy to do that. So whatever we can do, yeah. And yeah. So, well, this was inspiring. Thank you for your vulnerability, your realness, and keep going.
Your courage.
Thank you so much.
Keep going. Oh. Double down.
Thank you both so much.
All right, Megan. We're going to go to the second show. We'll say bye for you for now, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. That was, as you said, that was very vulnerable and very, very sweet. And I think it's important to highlight that putting so much output and effort and emotions and mind into fighting for justice and fighting for democracy and fighting to protect the most vulnerable. And, you know, it's exhausting. It's really exhausting. And it gets a point where you feel so tired and so vulnerable, and maybe economically vulnerable, and, you know, socially emotionally, physically vulnerable that it's easy to give up. I understand people that says, I can't do this anymore. And it's unfair, I think, that is the people that are protecting our rights, that are protecting our society, that are protecting our democracy, that are protecting our planet where we live and our children are going to live, are the ones that have to pay the higher price.
Exactly.
They don't make a lot of money and they pay a personal, very high price. And it's just so unfair.
Yes, exactly. And this is what goes back to, she said this, silence is complicity, but there's another factor here that is extra evil. That if you have power of some sort or a platform and you're silent, it's a lot like sticking oppressed people with the bill. Because it's not just that you're neutral. Neutrality is an illusion when it comes to things like this, like the Epstein files or misogyny, misogynistic behavior, systemic sexism, all those things. And so it's that idea of like, oh, I'm going to go ahead and let oppressed people pay my tab for this. It's less about the fact that the assholes keep getting away with it, and it's more what it says to people that are the recipients of this kind of shit. And she talked about the system and the cost of being in the system and the fear and money and the stress and what struck me is I wrote it down because it was like, whoa, it kind of gave me an epiphany that the sort of the American model of capitalism, especially in the last since World War II, has it's always been extractive, out of it, slavery and genocide and those things were direct. They were not just related to Christian nationalism and white supremacy. They were related to the idea that the ends justify the means, a Machiavellian view so they were related to capitalism, the American style of capitalism. And for many years, they just sort of benefited from if you were broken. If you're broken, they would, so there would be advertising. And I've said this before, behind every insecurity is a grift. Somebody's exploiting that insecurity for money or power. But what's happened now, especially with the algorithm and the attention economy, and even if you go into like the illegal, like fentanyl and opioids and guns and gun trafficking, all those things, human sex trafficking, is it now the system that we're in only works if you're broken. Yeah. It used to be you could kind of like, I'm just going to go home and go to my house. And it sucks, but I got my dog, maybe I got a person, maybe I got some kids, whatever. And you kind of insulate yourself from it and you go back out. You can't do that anymore. It's like your choice is to stay broken or to heal and get out. Now, and this is where Megan was at. A lot of people heal and get out, and you hear about it. They move to another country. They go live in the mountains. They go live off the land, whatever. And that's their thing. I don't judge that at all. But a portion of us heal, and we have to go back. It is kind of the hero's journey to some extent. We got to go back. And so all the things that broke us are still there. The extracted and the hierarchical power and the social conditioning, everything. And the level of courage it takes to leave a system pales in comparison to the courage to go back into a system. Again, I think of Gandhi as an example,
Yeah. And also, not everybody can live the system like that. I mean, it takes some level of...
If you can. Yeah, if you can. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Sorry.
And so I think that the alternative is stay broken and allow the system to exploit you until you die, and also become an exploiter yourself.
Yeah.
Like just play the game, or to heal and fight back. I don't think you can heal and stay in the system as neutral. I mean, you either fight back or you go back to be broken again. I mean,
That's
this
right.
is
Yeah. But you have to, in order to heal, you got to leave the system. I don't think you can stay in the system and heal entirely. You gotta get out in some way. You got to purchase your own freedom, and which means that
the system is everywhere. I mean, where do you
yeah.
live? If you are in society,
yeah,
and
right.
even
I'm
in
saying
other countries.
yes, but what I'm saying is I'm primarily referring to in the U.S. the economic system, because you can't check out of the federal government system and some of this like separatists do and things like you really can't do that anymore. But more what I'm saying is like for Megan, and I don't want to project onto her, but she came out of the corporate life and she made the stand against a very, very powerful person, Dan Snyder, and exposed what was happening. And but the work that she talked about, the healing work, like she moved, she changed, she had to make let's call it this, it's a lifestyle decision.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, I think in the Bible, there was Joseph of Arimathea. He was a rich guy that was a kind of a secret follower of Jesus. It was the one that paid for his tomb and went and got his body and prepared it for burial. And I've always thought of him as a model of somebody that was like, or Schindler's List as an example. In the moment within a system that was corrupt and terrible, they did something brave, but they didn't change the system. I don't know whatever happened to him. He didn't become an apostle or anything like that. We don't know. There's no recorded history of what happened to him after that. But it's and I did that for years within the church that I was in. That I was sort of the outlaw of the church, and I realized how much that was an oxymoron. You can't be an outlaw and stay in the church that I was in. That doesn't work that way. Or trying to be in a political party that I left the Republican Party in 2006 because it just no longer represented my values, especially related to queer people and immigrants, just like I couldn't do it. So I guess what I'm saying is there is a leaving to heal. And it would be so tempting. I deal with this sometimes here in Mexico City. So I look out over our balcony and, this beautiful city, a million things to do. It'd be so easy to just say, fuck it. I'm just going to go get good contract work as a marketing guy. But, we grind and eat tacos and do marketing work for companies that don't really give a shit about social change. But I can't. And goddamn, I wish I could sometimes, And I think that's the thing too, as a swam, a straight white American man, like I certainly will never ever experience what an immigrant has been through, or a woman has been through, or a person of color, or a queer person, or going down the line, or disabled person, whatever the thing is that I haven't experienced. And I do know that there's a cost to leave a system. I know that firsthand. There's a cost to it. The stand against Trump has cost me essentially my entire family outside of, the boys and their partners and Lena and everybody. Like, it's cost me that. And there's grief there, but it's still the right thing to do,
Yeah.
So,
and it's interesting because, I mean, you know that I've been witnessing and participating and actually supporting a lot of people from different sectors and different economic levels around the world on fighting against injustice and the system in general. And one thing that I've noticed is that, interesting enough, it's harder for middle class people to do this, to fight back, than it is for lower class or upper class. I mean, if someone that has a lot of money, a lot of power, is wealthy and has a reputation, stand up, yes, it might get a lot of attention, a lot of backlash, everything, but that person can afford to do that. his security is not at risk. I mean, it's not going to get broke overnight. That doesn't happen. So they can afford it. And I agree with you that those people have a lot of influence, but they're the minority. So really the middle class and lower class are the ones that can make big changes, because it's the adding up, is the compilation, or how you call it, the like interest. It's
Compounding
just
interest,
compounding interest of many medium and small actions simultaneously, by a huge collective. The people that are from marginalized communities and oppressed communities and more vulnerable communities actually have very, very little to lose. And when you were saying that the temptation of leaving, just quitting, fighting, I was thinking if I could ever had that as an option. I don't think I ever had that option.
Yeah.
It's not an option for me, partly because of where I come from,
Right.
partly because when you are in that sector of, minorities, the majority made of minorities, you have more a sense of community, and the community push you. I mean, if I stop doing what I'm doing, I have a large community that will say, what do you think you're doing? What's going on, Virginia? I mean, you can't stop. We need you leading this too. I mean, we need you part of this. And that's a different kind of pressure, but it's something that, for me, I never really consider it as an option. So it's interesting that where you are, where you're coming from, who is your community, or what community you belong to, also determines how, your capacity to find the courage and to step up and to stand up in a way that feels right, not like a luxury, not like I will sacrifice everything I have as a middle class. I will sacrifice everything I have to fight for this or fight for that, but also be super scared about what I might lose, because that's the point where people feel that they don't have the impact that upper class may have, wealthy people may have, but they have more to lose, let's say, than the communities that have been oppressed historically.
Right. And I think there's sort of this beautiful but painful synchronicity here, which is you as an immigrant coming out of oppressive systems, in the sense of, like, they were, authoritarian structures, and coming to the US to better yourself in the sense of education in particular, to pursue your calling around communication for social change. And there is a kind of, it's just, that's something that gave you a very different, very unique perspective, that many people don't have. I mean, I live in Mexico City now, but I'm still a gringo, and I am an immigrant here, but it's different. It's different. I know that. But what the lesson to me is in that is, it's almost to call it like spiritual immigration. That people that are in the U.S. that come from places of more power or resources, that they have to leave that and go and they have to leave that system in their own in their own way. And there's a kind of, I don't mean this systemically or from a social prejudice standpoint, but from very much a spiritual standpoint of, you have to leave something behind to go to where you're going next. You have to do that. And you're not going to find that in suburbia, or, grinded away until you get the promotion at some company that doesn't give two shits about you or other human beings, I think there's I think about what you're doing with bootstrapping justice, and that's going to be linked to in the show notes. Bootstrapping Justice is a four module program. I co-facilitate the branding one with you, of basically distilling 30 years of like real world activism and coaching activists and real world shit. Not like, people trying to, as you once said, they're not trying to fight for income equality. They're trying to fight for the right to live. Like real heavy shit. And you're teaching it to U.S. small business owners that want to use their business to fight, fascism or authoritarianism or injustice. And, but in that structure of, as Megan was sharing her story, I kept thinking, well, yeah, okay, she needed to have the mindset, that indomitable mindset that you talk about. And she seems to be already kind of a systems thinker, but not necessarily from a leadership perspective. And then she knows she has a brand and she has to use it. And she's following her soul, which is great, but there's also a need. You also got to have a plan too. It was like, I think that it's the shift from like, it's like here in Mexico City, or Mexico in general, is basically people protest in between votes. Like, they don't vote. Their protesting is not just their vote. They do it. They have rallies and things, and we see it here all the time. And I think there's many Americans, especially those that benefited largely from the systems that make up America, that are like, oh, what I'm being asked to do is to be an activist, not go to the Capitol and hope a sign with a clever slogan on it. Yeah. That's really better than staying home.
That's a
protest. Yes. But a protester and an activist are not the same thing.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Anyway.
And you were talking about silence as a form of complicity. When the silence is intentional, yes. But I know a lot of people, especially that small business owners that we're trying to help right now, they really want to do something. They really care. They're just literally, they're paralyzed by not knowing what to do because nobody taught you. I mean, especially in the United States, there is not a culture of communal coalitions and activism and, being individual fighting for their social rights and civic rights. They care about their own rights and their own, growing and privilege and security and all that, but not at the collective level, and that there is not necessarily a understanding of how the system works and how everything is reinforcing each other, other things, and how they can break that. And bootstrapping justice is precisely to give them that tool, is to say, listen, you have the courage, you have the resource, you have a lot of leverage. I'm going to use everything I learned in 30 years of working and training organizers and movements and all that. I'm going to just tell you exactly what you need to do or what you need to know so you can actually use your brand to fight back in a way that is strategic. I mean, we're not asking for sacrifices. We're not asking, actually, I don't believe in self-sacrifice anymore for the good cause. I don't believe in standing in front of the train and let it kill you to become an example. That doesn't change anything. But strategic action actually changes things. So that's the point. It's just, you only have to learn what to do, when to do it, with whom, and be strategically and being timely and being very sharp, knowing that it's not about how much you do, it's how smart is what you do actually is effective, and it's going to create a ripple effect. And that's what people don't know, but can be learned, can be really learned. So, and in short times, I mean, you just need to have someone, and this is the work that we're doing, is to distill all that knowledge, information, and experience into 4 things that are enough for you to start doing something.
Exactly. Well, anything else on your heart or mind about what we heard?
No, I just highlight one thing that she mentioned somehow about her calling is, even if you are not super clear and you don't have a plan about it and you don't have a brand about it, but maybe you're in transition, maybe whatever you're doing, she says something, paraphrasing, but something like, just keep your eyes open to provide value and service to others. And those opportunities, it's amazing for us, had happened that just keeping your eyes open and say, how can I serve here? How can I support who I can support now? Has opened many doors for us, and actually somehow has give us some guidance or where we should go next.
Yeah.
So it's extremely valuable to just be in the position of serving others all the time, even if you don't understand where it's going to get you, where that's going to take you. Yes.
Yes, exactly. And I guess my thing is just reiterating something I said to her, but I think it applies, is if you're called, you're going to go through a long, dark valley. It's not optional. It's necessary. It's almost like an spiritual evolutionary thing. Is it's what is called in Christian circles deconstruction. Deconditioning. You and others call it decolonizing. It's part of it, and the system and the people that benefit from the system at the very top, like the people in the Epstein files and those that are enabling them, they are counting on you to be more afraid of that long, dark valley than of them. Because that's the buffer. Because if you go through that long, dark valley, you will no longer be afraid of anybody. Because you've slayed the lion and you've rode the dragon and you did the thing. Like you become indomable, you become unfuckable with in many ways. And it doesn't mean that all the anxiety is going to go away and you're going to be, just kind of a blissed out like spiritual warrior. Nah. But there's an inner strength that only comes by walking that long, dark valley. And so walk it. You don't have to do it alone, by the way, but you still have to walk it. So,
yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
As I mentioned, Bootstrapping Justice is available as a cohort. By the time this episode posts, we will probably already be open in cohort 1, but our goal is to put 500 entrepreneurs through the cohort, through the program. So we're always going to have more cohorts open, or if you are a person with money and resources on a platform and want to sponsor a Bootstrapping Justice for the people in your community or circle, you know how to find us, and we would love to do that with you. And with that, go be defiant. Thank you.
Yeah.